Joe Biden faces off with Putin, and the only analyst who has the correct answer is professional wrestler Tyrus. Joe Biden held a video call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. As you see from the various captions, Biden warns Putin of very real cost if Russia takes military action in Ukraine. This one by the PBS NewsHour is indicative of how the news media will trust anything released by the White House. Biden made consequences of Ukraine invasion crystal clear in call with Russia's Putin. This was relayed to us by Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor. You may recall Jake Sullivan. He was at the center of pushing the fake Hillary Clinton narrative that Donald Trump was a Russian spy. Jake Sullivan was Hillary Clinton's chief of staff. You have to wonder why Hillary Clinton needed a chief of staff while a civilian with no office whatsoever. In that capacity, he passed along the message that Donald Trump was a Russian spy. And so what did they do? They rewarded him by making him a Biden spokesman. But we don't actually know what Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin discussed, because the White House hasn't released anything more than 10 seconds of their actual conversation. Can we trust what they said? Look at how different it was. The news media covered Trump's phone calls with world leaders as if it was something to be suspicious of, skeptical of. They didn't trust anything Trump discussed in private with world leaders. They were always breathlessly reporting on how Trump's engaging in some kind of conspiracy behind the backs of the American people. But when it's Joe Biden, suddenly the news media trusts any private conversations that Joe Biden has. It's great to be a Democrat in 2021 because you will not have a watchdog press expressing skepticism of your activities with world leaders like they did with Donald Trump. But the person who had the most accurate analysis on the Ukraine crisis was Tyrus of the Five.
And here's the thing. I think that Putin, he sees the lay of the land. Yep. And he sees how the woke administration makes deals. I'm sure he gave the Taliban a call, and they're like, so what did you get? How many helicopters? How many? Wow. Hey, new training exercise. Let's all go stand by Ukraine and see what we can get. And I guarantee you, he's going to get a lot. Yep. They're not going to get NATO. They're not going to get any new weapons. He'll get some new deal. There'll be some new thing. And they'll act like it's a victory. And Ukraine's going to be like, what about us? Just like
or Ukraine.
The people at the airport in Afghanistan were saying, what about us? The dinner bell has been rung, and everybody's coming to get a piece.
Tyrus is the best analyst and commentator on television today. Heck, they should give him his own anchor slot on Fox News at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. You have all these professional news analysts at all these news networks, and Tyrus was the one who nailed it. Vladimir Putin just has to do a training exercise at no cost to him, and all he has to do is wait to see what Joe Biden will give him free in return for not invading the Ukraine. Putin must think that our leaders are a bunch of idiots, and he'd be right. Election denier, who circulated January 6 PowerPoint, says he met with Meadows, the White House Chief of Staff under Donald Trump. Now, this story is a good example of how the news media doesn't actually do investigations. The January 6 committees run by the Democratic Party after winning the 2020 presidential election, they decided to punish those who worked for the preceding administration, such as Donald Trump's Chief of Staff, Meadows. Mark Meadows here. Now, this story, which looks like a news story, is not a story at all. The January 6 committee announced with a leak of a presentation that had been handed to this man that they were going to arrest him for failing to appear before their committee. The Democratic Party went to the publisher of the Washington Post and said, we're about to arrest this guy. Please create a story purporting to investigate him. What is the investigation of this very long story? That he was shown a PowerPoint by a Trump consultant about ways to challenge the 2020 presidential election. At no point in the story does the content of the story match the headline? The person who came up with the PowerPoint presentation was a paid political consultant whose specialty was cybersecurity. Phil Waldron is a cybersecurity consultant who specialized in psychological operations during his military career. So his job is to look for ways for Donald Trump, after he lost the 2020 presidential election, to challenge that election. This is the precise job of consultants who offered to assist Al Gore in contesting the 2000 election, lawyers and consultants who urged John Kerry to challenge the 2004 presidential election, and of course the river of lawyers and political activist groups who urged Hillary Clinton to challenge the 2016 presidential election. But you're only an election denier if you work for the Republicans. Then in January, he worked with the Trump legal team to research specific examples of election fraud that had already taken place in 2020. So 2021, this man was paid to research election fraud. So you've got a very long news story here, and there's not actually any crimes listed in the news story. Walden heads a discreet cybersecurity firm. And the story simply ends. So the order went out from the Democratic Party to the Washington Post. They told the publisher, put out a story showing that this guy is guilty of something. So he's referred to as a election denier. But his job was to research election fraud. That's not denying anything. That's doing research. But when you can lie for the Democratic Party, what's left of American journalism? We don't have a free press in America in 2021. They simply repeat what the Democratic Party orders them to say, and they even take the word of Joe Biden at every turn that he is looking out for our best interests. Is he really? Indeed, baby. Indeed. Thank you.